Hello and welcome to the episode of The Card Show. In this week's episode, we're talking a bit about the past of cards and does the past sort of help define, does it show the future? Does it all come full circle? Does the past define the future? Does the past have anything to do with the future of cards? Um, but yeah, I thought it would be quite interesting sort of topic to go down. Um, having spoken to a lot of people, obviously London Card Show and the Yorkshire Card Show, and obviously online, they sort of current state, should we say? It sounds bad when you say state, but the current whereabouts of the hobby in the UK and in Europe, and the stuff we're facing left, right, and centre with you know charges to the US, and hopefully PSA opening in Germany, and UK grading companies, and then shows being sort of more Pokemon than sports. Whereas if you go back a couple of years back, a lot of this early sports card shows were just sports card shows, right? A lot of the card shows just with sports cards, and Pokemon TCG was sort of left to sort of the Comic Con sort of stuff. Um, but yeah, I thought, you know, it's something that I've looked into in the past and talked about briefly. And this is going to be a brief overview, or else we could be talking for hours on end. I don't think anyone wants that, do we? But yeah, we'll talk about sports cards, from the vintage to sort of the modern stuff as well. A little bit on why like the hobby is so sort of booming at the moment. Booming. Um, so yeah, let's get into the nitty gritty, should we say? Let's get into the past. I think when a lot of people think of vintage as well, maybe they don't think as far back, but these sort of quote unquote, air quotes for the people who are listening, the just a quote unquote sort of earliest sort of sports cards with the 1800s, which is kind of crazy to think about, right? 1800s. They were in tobacco packs. Again, something else that's kind of become a bit of a relic, right? They might be worth grading soon. The old, is it Amber Leaf? I've never smoked, so I don't know what. It's a green packaging, rings a bell. I've seen old men on like a, pull out the bag, little green here, and roll it onto little Rizzlers. But yeah, so yeah, that was in the late 1800s. At the time, it was baseball, which is yeah, kind of crazy to think. That was how it kind of started, right? That's how it all blew. It wasn't like one big company. It was like, this sports thing is really kicking off. We should put some pictures on cardboard and sell them to kids. I don't know what accent that was, but that was an accent. Deal with it. Which is again kind of crazy. And I think even again, you fast forward to now, look at the cards of early baseball. As we call them Starson, basically. We look at the Honus Wagner, for instance. You know, very much coveted, very expensive card. Like a lot of these 1800 stuff is. Hobby sort of takes on by, right? You sort of, I don't want to like miss time here, but it just sort of it grew at a slow, steady rate. It wasn't until really like I'd say 80s that the hobby started to boom. And there was obviously sets from big companies, obviously Tops, etc. beforehand, when it became like an actual thing. But it wasn't until a couple of years after, or a couple of decades after they started doing so, that it was really sort of at a height, who we say. Sort of one of the pinnacles. Again, it's when things become more global, things become a lot more eyes on it. It's been one of the things, right? More people have been watching the sports in the 80s because it became more accessible with sort of Sky TV and that sort of stuff. All of a sudden, people wanted some sort of memorabilia, some sort of connection to those stars, right? So it kind of worked out well that sports cards were going through a sort of moment as well, and that was said the late 1980s, 1990s sort of area. Um, just a rookie chase sort of began. Um, the downside to this was obviously overproduction. It was a big overproduction, created what was called the junk wax era, um, which is kind of, in some respects, kind of what we're going through, and not as bad, maybe more so um, right now. And it's obviously just a flood at the market. It does cause a lot of time. It caused a lot of values to plummet, and again, a lot of hardcore collectors sort of lost a bit of faith, right? I mean, I think I saw a stat. I've seen a few stats, but I remember one a couple of years ago. It was like a certain quarterback had something like 54 one of one shield cards. And it was like his second year, something like that. It was ridiculous how he had so many shield patches when it'd take him X amount of years to get 54. Um, wear 54 shields. So yeah, obviously they weren't all game used, but yeah, it just kind of shows, right? I think there was another one about how many rookie cards a certain player has, and it was multiple thousands. It's ridiculous. So you can see that if you're a hardcore collector wanting to have rare stuff as well, that sort of stuff can really sort of put you off. And it sort of didn't have a reset per se, but it just sort of had a cooling off period, right? There was that whole, oh, we've overdone our hand, the businesses learn, and it took another 15 or so years, possibly more, to sort of like 15, 20 sort of range for it to sort of come out like junk wax era and get to a certain stage where it was able to sort of go back up again. Not because of like they cut down volumes of cards or anything else. It was almost like a perfect storm, right? Because out of sort of nowhere, uh, sports cards became like bigger and better than ever, like a bigger bang than ever. I think the massive point of that is obviously the influencers. So obviously the difference in ages again. So you have these influencers that you see a lot more on your YouTube channels or your Instagrams, TikToks, and then COVID. Um, it sort of brought around like a modern sort of boom, should we say? Um, it it didn't sort of hit the ground running just because of people got into it without any sort of education, right? They sort of heard these influencers say, "Oh, sports cards," and maybe name drops, and whether it's pump or dump on them sort of players, that's for another episode. For instance, Dan has mentioned, Sports Card UK has mentioned that he, sort of advised, but was heard about the Michael Jordan Flair. I think it's 90. I think it's 87 sticker, might be 86 sticker. It's like his rookie sticker, and he purchased it, and now I think he still has it in his collection. It's still doing very well. Financially, he's gone up quite a lot. Just a very good hold for him. Um, so it's, in some respects, it's not the best education. It wasn't like this is the card, this is a sticker in that case, and this is the grade, and this is the company, or this is that. It was, heard. I think I don't want to get it wrong, but I think it was Gary V talking about it. Was saying, hey, the Jordan Flair sticker, maybe it's undervalued, and this, that, the other. So there was that sort of information, but not like a full sort of understanding, full teaching sort of thing. So a lot of people did get sort of burnt and just bought certain things. They heard Michael Jordan, maybe couldn't afford the sticker. I just ended up with any sort of Michael Jordan card sticker from any era, thinking that, oh, all Michael Jordan's gold, just because, what's the difference between an 87 and a 89? What's the difference between, the 86 Flair and the 1996 Flair? The decade of excellence, it was called. Um, and that sort of thing, it meant that it was a sort of a blip, right? Because it came out of a boom, but then a lot of people sort of dropped out quite quickly because they didn't make the money, sort of thing, or they lost a lot of money, should we say. Um, the plus side was also we had two sort of major companies at the front in Beckett and PSA who sort of brought a good sort of legitimacy to sort of professional grading. And I think that helped. I think people knew about Beckett throughout the years. Anyway, PSA a lot newer, but the work they'd done and the social side of it for them. And the fact during COVID they were still sort of semi-processing cards and helping out and speaking, whereas Becky sort of shut up shop and just that was it. Goodbye. And as as we touched on there, is social media. So the reels. It was also a lot of Instagram breaks. Again, if you were in the UK at the time, you know how big Instagram breaks were, and then that sort of stuff helped. And then again, you see on the boom of people having their own sort of Instagram for card accounts. Cards became a lot more of a sort of alternative asset, and with the likes of Gary Vee, other influencers talking about the potential in a few years. And I think it was Vintage Baseball has consistently now for X amount of years outdone the S&P 500 or something like that. We've seen some of these cards sell for millions, and it's not like one or two. There's a decent amount of cards that are selling for millions, and if not millions, there's hundreds of thousands. We obviously one of the biggest ones this year that was well documented was the Jaden Daniels 101 Black Prism, I think it was, rough cards at the Fanatics Fest. Although I didn't like the whole way that was sold. I thought it was very market trader belittling in some respects, or sort of dogged way. Like Mike Rubin was shouting across the screen, on stage. It was it wasn't the best look for the hobby, but hey ho. But yeah, he sold that to the owner of the Washington Commanders for like $500,000, which is crazy, right? Yeah, yeah, and that sort of leads us on a little bit onto sort of what is hot now. Jaden Daniels was hot in thoughts he's not had the year that he had last year. Injuries, etc., affected himself and the team. I see a lot of people today collecting, obviously, investing, should we say. Victor Wembanyama, the Shohei Ohtani is now his back-to-back World Series winner. Caitlin Clark was massive again till the injury. I think a lot more people are learning about autograph cards, sort of patch cards, the difference in patch cards. Similar with autograph cards, the sort of the difference in value between on card and sticker, game used, sort of was it player worn, that sort of stuff, or not affiliated. Another one there, and limited print runs, serial numbered inserts. I think people are starting to realize now that this is where the sort of money should sort of go, because it's a scarcity thing, right? There's also a lot of times when people buy in base, and don't get me wrong, there's still a lot of money to be made in base. We've gone through that numerous times on a lookout. You look at data dives, one of the most liquid cards in a hobby, base cards. If you can get them for pennies, or if you can pick them up for a pound and have a good week or whatever, you could churn them out for 5, 10, 15, 20x what you pay for them, depending on who they are and how well they've played. Um, I think at one point, I think was it the Zion? Was it the Zion Prism Silver Prism? It was like ridiculous, and it was it's like a probably like 30,000. And the silver's not far off, right? At 20,000, something like that. Um, yeah, it was it's just crazy. I think Mac Jones something similar. Like his Donruss paper base was going for like just ridiculous amount. Yeah, now it's a giveaway card, right? Um, I think people learn as well, like a lot of what they like. I think Panini has sort of been on the top for the last decade or so because of the Prism, especially like I said the silver. Like it was, even though it's not numbered, it's just more scarce than the base, but not expensive. Not as expensive as a numbered Prism, right? Um, More often than not. You do get sometimes you do get some random like 349 Prism or maybe or 299 that is sometimes cheaper than the Prism Silvers. Because there's a color into it, we just don't like a random color into the car. It just doesn't go well that year. But more often than not, Prism Silver, a very liquid car. People go for it because again, it's attainable, affordable. Same with the Optic Hollows over Optic Base. Now, Tops has got the license, and Tops for the last 10 years has been mainly sort of baseball. Obviously, they had a bit of F1 the last couple of years, but the main thing for the last decade was sort of baseball. With them acquiring licenses to NBA and NFL next year, I think NFL is. It's definitely changed the game. Now, I think if you look back to sort of the early, I mean, I'll say LeBron, for instance, his rookie card that everyone's chased was the Tops Chrome, right? Tops Chrome. If you go back to sort of, if you're early days or as old as I am, if you go back to like 2002, Bowman and Finest, that sort of stuff, it did have some beautiful looking cards. So we can only hope that they come back again. It's going to be interesting to see what is sort of replacement to the Optic and the sort of the Prism. Your best bet is your Chrome Sapphire sort of thing. There was something else. What did they bring? I think it's Signature Class. I think it's called. I saw this year. It was obviously unlicensed, but yeah, I bought a few of them. I was going to do a little bit on them about how they're quite similar to a rookie ticket. But yeah, we shall see what sort of people's choices are this next decade of dominance from Tops. I think as well not to forget Upper Deck as well. Who've been doing some exquisite cards. I play on words there for a while now. Now, if you're just getting started in sort of sports cards collecting, then it's very easy. If you ask me this, ask me here. If I ask myself, if you ask me, because you just need to, think about what you want to collect. If you want to collect a certain team, then you can get any card that you like. It's your collection. If you like a certain set and it's cheap, buy that set if it's what you like. If you want to get into this investment purposes, then obviously there's a different sort of angle you have to hit. Because you need to make sure that that card is desirable for other people to buy, right? And is going to have some sort of seller markets in the future. But like I said, it's very easy if you're looking to collect. You pick the sport or the player that you like or you love. Learn about grading. Because that will teach you about conditioning. It doesn't mean that you have to get every card graded or buy every card as a Gen Mint 10. I have numerous cards that aren't. I think I actually bought a 6. Did I buy a 6? Yeah, I think I bought a 6. I think someone was selling, like, a numbered it was a numbered Mahomes. It was nothing special. It's like a pinnacle purple. I I'm gonna say it's down here with me, but I don't know now. I think it is. And again, it was when I say it was cheap as chips, it was like I don't even think it was $10. Maybe it was. I can't remember. But I'm sort of like 8.99, so it was really cheap. This guy clearly lost money because he graded PSA, PSA 6. And yeah, I was like, why not? Worst case scenario, I crack it open, maybe give it a little clean, wipe any fingerprints off it, send it back, and it comes back an 8. It's a 9. Maybe it's just a 6. That's what it is. It's a numbered card of someone who I support and I like, so I wasn't going to complain. I think as much as we as well talk about in other episodes about the whole breaking scenario, I think watching breaks is interesting. You sort of learn a little bit about the market, about what people want, and the breaks obviously usually the bigger breaks are sort of the release night, right? The release night, the latest products people want in, to see where the sort of money's going, where the highest spots are, the highest price spots, and that sort of stuff. So it's always interesting. I think the easiest part of when you're collecting is not chasing the hype. Collect, like I said, what excites you, as opposed to investing a little bit where you're trying to get ahead of the hype. You're sort of trying to see the hype in X, Y, Z amount of times. Yeah, some months, maybe sometimes. But yeah, you're trying to get that stage, right? But yeah, whether you're investing or whether you're in it, for nostalgia or if you're for investment, it's again just a bit of a pure passion. Sports cards, they offer a sort of a look into the games that we love, and these people. I don't call them heroes per se, but the people we sort of admire their abilities. Um, I think it's definitely a great way to sort of, especially if you get those, you know, cards that have been in hand and signed. These know they've touched it or a game. So I got a Frank Clark game used, um, patched auto, and it's like he wore it in a game, and he was a dog for the Chiefs. He put it all on the line. He was always running, chasing, tackling, getting sacks. He was a dog. Um, well, it was a shot, wasn't it? But it sort of means a little bit more. But thank you for listening. Hope this episode give you a brief sort of run through. Again, didn't want to go too depth because this has been 23 minutes and I've just gone through 3 sort of generations in 5 minutes apiece. But yeah, it's to think how the hobby sort of started. Could it go back to that sort of way? Getting I, which is funny because I got some stickers in Spain. If you bought these 2 Milka bars, I knew you should put a video out. Yeah, you 2 Milka bars wrapped up and had some La Liga stickers in between. Which is quite funny that I just saw tobacco packs and cigarettes, cigarette cards. But yeah, in baseball, then is now the football the world sport? Is that going to be the one that said this? In the candy, there's chocolates, the vape. Is that the new one? The vape liquid. Is that the equivalent today? Interesting. I think one of the biggest ones I did see, to be fair, as a crossover lately, was the One Piece monkey, the Lofi. Is that his name? I can't even think of his name right now. The Lofi one with LA Dodgers. I know he's done like Dortmund as well, but the Dodgers one was a massive, massive card. But yeah, baseball have its day again. I mean, not like it needs its day again. It's doing very well, especially the vintage. But yeah, will it be the number one in cards? I don't know. At the moment, way America's game is changed into NFL and how that's changed into world, I think that'll be the one in NFL quarterbacks. where the money will be. Just going off the data the past few years, also. But no, thanks for joining this episode. Hope you enjoyed it. Hope it was semi insightful. And I will see you soon. Peace.